All right, today we're going to take an in-depth look at what the dumper's experience looks like during a no contact rule. Now, I've filmed similar videos to this in the past, but none that actually focused on what their experience looked like during the no contact rule itself. All right, let's jump in. If you simply play the numbers, then the question of what's going on in a dumper's head during a no contact rule should actually be reframed as what is the experience of an avoidant during no contact. Now, I have polled our community 2 separate times over the course of 2 separate years to ask them the following question. What attachment style do you believe your ex is? Now, the first poll that I'm showing you right now was conducted in 2020. You can see what type of attachment style would you guys say your ex is. Now, close to 70% of the vote came in as saying that their ex or that they believe their ex was an avoidant. I've followed this research up by conducting a second poll with pretty much the exact same question 1 year later, and once again, about 70% of the vote came in saying that they believe that their ex was avoidant. So same question, same result. Now, I've done a ton of research on avoidance and silence and what works and what doesn't work, but perhaps none are more relevant to this particular discussion than this particular video that I did with one of our coaches, Coach Tyler, where we were basically going through the stages that a dismissive avoidant will go through during no contact. So in it, Coach Tyler and I argue your ex is going to go through 5 main stages during no contact. The avoid stage, the feelings beginning to bubble stage, the resuppression stage, the moving on stage, and then finally the nostalgia stage. But the more I thought about these 5 stages, the more I found that there might have been a flaw with our logic. So in most cases, these 5 stages occur in a lengthier timeline than an actual no contact rule would allow. In fact, I think the stages that we put forth in that video are actually a better indication of what the dumper is actually experiencing throughout the entirety of a breakup, as opposed to just the short timeline of a no contact rule. And one look at my relationship death wheel can bear that out. So remember, with the death wheel, there are 8 main stages. You want someone to love you, you think you found someone, your troubles are over, you start noticing some worrying things, you start thinking that you're going to leave the relationship, then you actually decide to leave the relationship. Then you're super happy that you left. Then you start to feel kind of lonely, and then you start to wonder why you can't ever find the right person, which leads you back to the beginning, and around we go. And pretty much every single stage that Tyler and I talked about in our video can be found somewhere in this particular death wheel. So the avoid stage, for example, can happen on the actual outset of the breakup, which is going to be stage 5 of the death wheel. The feelings bubbling to the surface that Tyler and I talk about, well, that's going to happen right around stage 7 of the wheel. The resuppression stage, well, that's going to happen right around stage 6. And yes, it's possible for an ex to basically go backwards in the wheel sometimes. Moving on will be stage 8, obviously. And then finally, the nostalgia stage is basically stage 1 of the death wheel. Basically, you have done one full revolution and you are right back to that very, very beginning where you want someone to love you. The flaw with the hypothesis that Tyler and I did in our video is the fact that in reality, at best, that usually the no contact rule is only going to really cover stages 5 through 7 of the death wheel. The I've decided to leave the relationship, the I'm so happy that I left, and the hey, I'm starting to kind of feel bad here. Thus, I would like to put forth a new hypothesis, new stages that you should expect a dumper to go through during the no contact rule. So here are the 4 stages that I believe a dumper is most likely going to go through during a no contact rule. So stage 1 is going to be called the initial relief stage. And I was tempted to put this in the separation elation category, but I actually think this is something a little bit different. So I remember going through my very first breakup ever. I was overcome, but not with sadness or grief. That happened a little bit later. But initially, I was overcome with relief. Our entire relationship was very toxic. There was a lot of arguments from both sides. And it just felt like after the relationship was over, immediately I just felt like weight had been lifted off my shoulders. That's nothing against her. It just had more to do with, oh my God, I don't have to worry about hurting this person's feelings anymore. Or, oh my God, I don't have to worry about getting into arguments anymore. Oh, this feels great. Stage 2 is the separation elation stage. Now, you've heard me talk about this a lot if you're familiar with this YouTube channel. Basically though, I'm going to pull from one of my favorite avoidant resources to basically bear out the separation elation. After a relationship ends, people with an avoidant attachment style tend not to show much anxiety or distress, often feeling an initial sense of relief, there's that word, at the relinquishing of obligations and the sense that they are regaining their self-identity and not tending to initially miss their partner. This is separation elation, as the pressure to connect is gone. So basically, it's like a mini honeymoon period that they have with themselves because they felt like they were losing themselves in the relationship. But now that they have broken up with you, guess what? They're starting to find themselves again. They're loving that feeling. And of course, this leads them to the next stage. Stage 3, the grass is greener stage. So what are breakups if not an admission that one party believes that they can do better than another party? Now, during the no contact rule, the dumper is actually playing that concept out in real life. Except here's the interesting thing. Most of the dumpers that we have studied end up getting kind of a nasty surprise. They believe they can do better than their ex. But when they go out there in the wild, they find out that maybe that's not exactly true. Maybe it's not as easy as they initially thought. After all, fantasy often does not match reality. Or they do end up finding someone else. And initially they do believe that they have found someone that's better than you until they prolong that dating period and they start comparing that new person to you and you start beating that new person out. Sure, sometimes the grass is greener on the other side. However, for most of our clients' exes, we've actually found that that tends to be the exception to the rule, which is interesting and leads us very beautifully to our fourth and final stage. Stage 4, also known as the relapse stage. So I'm kind of 50-50 on this one. Half the time we find that exes will experience it, and half the time during a no contact rule we find that they skip it entirely. In fact, I actually talked about this in an article that I wrote last week, to which I quote, "Because the pain is so intolerable, you may actually be able to convince your ex to try again. This may not be the first breakup with this partner. You will temporarily relieve the agony of withdrawal." So essentially what's happening here is that towards the end of the no contact rule, after your ex has suffered without you, after they've gone through these stages, they decide that they're going to relapse and try to ask for you back. Like I said, this tends not to happen all the time, and sometimes it's just a state of mind where they don't actually act on wanting you back or on relapsing to the relationship. But I would like to look at an interesting case study from a real success story to kind of bear this out. Now, if you haven't watched my latest success story with Nina, I highly recommend that you do so. Nina, what makes her kind of interesting is that she actually used our program to get not one, but two of her exes back. And the way that they reacted to the no contact rule was wildly different. And I think is a perfect explanation for why some exes experience that relapse stage where they want you back. And then some exes do not experience it at all. They skip it altogether. The first ex basically begged for her back during the no contact rule. The second ex did not. So with the very first ex, basically he went through all of the stages that I just listed above, but let's just listen to her own words. She says, and I quote, "I stuck to no contact, and then after 30 days, he called me. I didn't pick up because I still wanted to do more no contact. I didn't just want to call. It wasn't going to be that easy. Then he sent me a message saying, 'Hey, can you pick up the phone? Because I want to get back together with you to talk because I want to get back together with you in general.' It was very straightforward." So literally in 30 days, she got her ex back. All she had to do was a no contact rule. He goes through those 4 stages. Now, is this normal? No. This is the exception to the rule. Yet, what's interesting about Nina is that she had another ex that was normal. And what's most likely going to happen in 90% of the people who are watching this video, who are attempting the no contact rule, who end up getting their exes back, they're going to experience the following. So with Nina's second ex, here's how it went down. He didn't literally contact her at all during the no contact. He literally moved away from her. And it took them 4 months before they got back together. This is well beyond the scope of a traditional no contact, which is not what people want to hear. And I think the lesson here is ultimately, if you go into the no contact rule expecting it to be the reason alone for why you get your ex back, you are in for a rude awakening. That's just not how it works. Most of the time, by the end of the no contact rule, you're gonna find that your ex is still caught up in that grass is greener syndrome. They are out there potentially thinking that they can do better than you, or slowly realizing that they can't. And what we're really hoping for is by the end of the no contact rule, when it's time for you to reach out to them, that they are slowly having that realization that it's not as great out there as they thought. And here you come.